Okay, so he writes like this today. He says, again, we're speaking about the name of Yisrael and the name of Yishmael. They both have Hashem's name in there. However, it appears very clearly that Hashem's name in Yisrael's name is him becoming a partner together with the Jewish people. We're united as one. On the other hand, Yishmael, even though it has God's name over there, it's just that Hashem heard the prayers of Hagar, but it's not that he's becoming one with the nation of Yishmael. And that's a major difference between the two of us. Even though that there's a godliness that is in Yishmael, it's only because God beckoned and heard the call, heard the cry of Hagar. Not that he's making Yishmael into a godly nation. On the other hand, the Jewish people, based on Yaakov's fighting with the angel, and he won, so therefore he was able to get infused with this new level of godliness that never existed before. And he writes, even though that Yishmael's name is Yishmael, which has God's name, but it's not similar to the name of God's name of Yisrael. Because the reason that God's name is in Yishmael's name is only because of one particular event, and that is that Hashem heard the prayers of Hagar. That's it. Yishmael. Hashem heard. What did he hear? He heard the cries of Hagar, and so therefore the baby's name now is Yishmael, that God heard the cries, which helped to bring about this child. V'karasa Shema Yishmael, and that's why his name is called Yishmael, Ki Shama Hashem al Yonech, because Hashem heard your cries, Hagar. Since that Hashem heard your cries, that's why it's Yishma, Hashem heard. But the godliness that exists by the Jewish people, when we have the name of God in our name, does not exist by Yishmael. He says a really fascinating thing. If you look at the way that the vowels, remember the Hebrew language, the way that we know what sounds the words make is because there's vowels under the letters. Sometimes the vowels on top of the letter, but there's vowels. There are dots, lines, and those are the vowels that we know how to make the sounds of the words that we read. So the vowels that are under the aleph in the name Yisrael, so aleph lamed, which is God's name, so there's what's called a tzere. It's two dots, they look like a sideways colon underneath the aleph, and that makes the ale sound. So he says, if you look at the name Yishmael, so we pronounce it Yishmael, which is just like Yisrael, but those two dots are not under the aleph in his name, which is God's name. Those two dots are under the ayin, which comes before the aleph. I don't know if I can show this to you over here, if you want to come and take a look. So, Yisrael, right. So the two dots are under the aleph, and that's God's name. Right. Yishmael, the two dots are under the ayin before you get to God's name. So he's saying that perhaps the reason that the Torah spells this, the Torah does it like that, is specifically to show you that there's no godliness in Yishmael. Happens to be that the reason that his name has a godly connotation is because God, in fact, did hear the cries of Hagar, and that's why his name is Yishmael. Hashem heard the cries, but the godliness, which is the ale that's in there, is not in the name of Yishmael. Meaning that's not where we get Yishmael. Is not from there. It's under the ayin itself. It's coming to show us this. Hashem did not connect himself to Yishmael in a godly way, the way that he did by the Jewish people. Rather, it's a special power that was given over to Yishmael because Hashem heard the cries and the prayers of Hagar. And therefore he gave Yishmael the power to oppress the children of Avraham, the Sarah, and Sarah, the Jewish people. Like we saw from the Ramban. Remember, the Ramban said that the reason that Hagar her prayers were answered, and the reason that she had a son whose name was Yishmael that was going to oppress the Jewish people, is because, remember, she retaliated, so to speak, against Hagar when she got upset with her, and she oppressed her, and she made her life very difficult. And the Ramban says over there that Sarah Imenu should not have done that. She should have been on a higher plane and level of existence, not to be bothered by what a maidservant, how she was causing her pain and making fun of her. She should have just let go. And as a result of not letting go and oppressing her, which she was entitled to do, but says the Ramban, on her level she should not have done it. Therefore, Hagar was heard, and Yishmael is given the power that he has, la'anais, to oppress the Jewish people. The Bishul Sheshama Hashem el Aniyah, because that Hashem heard the oppression of Hagar, Nasan la ben para Adam, he gave her this wild man as a son, la'anais as b'nei Avram v'Sarah, in order to give oppression and to make the lives of the children, of the offspring of Avram and Sarah, difficult. So it's not godliness that's in his name. It's just a matter of fact that God's name is in his name, because Hashem heard the prayers. He saw the suffering that they were going through, and therefore she was answered. And Yishmael is born as a result of those prayers. But that he's a godly nation? No, he's not. And that's different than the Jewish people. The Jewish people are Yisrael, which means we're walking around as a godly nation all the time. Everywhere that a Jew goes, every step that he takes, everything about the Jew means he's walking together. Meshutev, he's combined together with Hashem. And he writes, Shekasav Shekibu Yishmael Koichoi V'Toichvo Mikoich Tfilas Avram V'Avinu. Yishmael got his powers from the prayers of Avraham, even, meaning Avram Avinu, remember, said, if only I would be able to live through my son Yishmael. Remember, we saw this verse before, that Avraham Avinu himself said that if only I could have offspring through Yishmael, which means that Avraham himself put like a special prayer into Yishmael. V'chan kasav shema shezacha likar b'shem keil hu b'nei shesham Hashem es tfilas Hagar. And now we're saying, Avraham Avinu was saying that I wish that I'll have a son and I'll be able to live on, and that's the son of Hagar. And then Hagar herself, she prayed, and her prayers brought down this godly name to her son. Umashalem shnei inyanim nifradim is two separate things. The mikoyach tfilas Avram zach liyos goy gadol v'nisbarach b'shiltoin b'kavod melucha, because of the prayers of Avram, that he was hoping and wishing that this child is going to become somebody great. He in fact did become a great nation, and he was blessed with like rulership and honor and monarchy and kingdom. But the fact that he got God's name in his name, that came because of the prayers of Hagar. Hashem heard her suffering. He wanted to rectify her shame. And therefore he gave power to Yishmael to afflict us and to pain us in the Achris Hayamim, in the end of days. So, as great as the power of Yishmael is, as we were pointing out the last couple of times, it pales in comparison to the godliness of the Jewish people. And therefore, if a Jew just taps in to that godliness that is there, so that, as we pointed out, is the biggest way to combat the powers that Yishmael has to be la'anais, to cause us pain. And I'll just finish off with this over here. We see the following in the Gemara in the Yerushalmi. Yisrael, Hashem gave us His name. His name is in our name, and that allows us to get close to Hashem. You, as it says in the Torah, you are Dovid, you are clinging to Hashem, your God. You're all alive today. This is a promise to the nitzchius, to the eternality of the Jewish people. That the Jewish people who have the name of God in them, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is eternal because He has no body, He's not bound by time or space, so there's no limitations. And therefore, just like Hashem and the Shekhinah are eternal, so the Jewish people, which now have the name of God in our name, we become eternal as well. And therefore, we have a Elokis, we have a godliness inside of us that Yishmael doesn't have and they never will have. And that makes us very, very different. And therefore, he just points out over here that there's a Rashi in the Chumash that says, anybody who stands up to fight against the Jewish people, is as if they are fighting against Hashem. It says that Hashem is together with us, or we're together with Him, and His name is in our name. Somebody who picks a fight with the Jewish people, you're taking on Hashem. And that's why all of even in the Megillah, it says that Haman was going full force to destroy the Jews. Full force. And he wanted to hang Mordechai from the tree, get rid of all the Jews. He made this evil decree. All of the neighboring provinces that were within the Achashverosh's countries, they were all given permission to destroy and kill the Jews. And his wife and his kids were like, yeah, go for it, kill the Jews. And then we find that things turned around, and that is that the king suddenly has a dream, and in his dream he begins wondering to himself when he wakes up in the middle of the night, maybe there's somebody that once did me a favor and I never took care of them. And so he brings his royal scribes and their books out, and he sees, lo and behold, Mordechai, years before, saved the life of the king because there was an assassination plot against King Achashverosh. Mordechai, who understood the language that these two people were speaking about, that they're going to assassinate the king, told to the king what happened, and he saved the king's life. And he said, you know what? I never rewarded him for doing such a thing. I have to reward him. At that moment, Haman walks into the palace in the middle of the night. He just can't wait to destroy the Jewish people. And Achashverosh says, Haman, what would you do for someone that the king wants to honor? So Haman, of course, in his hardiness thought, the king must be talking about me. So he said, oh, well, you should give him the royal clothing and put the king's robe on him and the king's crown, and you should get one of the king's royal horses, and you should put him on the horse, and you should have someone walking in front of the horse and saying, this is what the king does to the one that he wants. This is how the king honors the one that he wants to honor. And Achashverosh said, what a great idea. Haman, do me a favor. Go and bring my clothing and my crown and my horse all to Mordechai the Jew, and you'll be the one who walks in front of the horse, and you'll say, this is what the king wants to do to the one that he wants to honor. And Haman was broken. And he comes home, and he says to his wife, I don't understand what happened. And he says, everything's turning around over here. Now the king wants to give Mordechai. And she said, oh. The Jews now are going on top. She says, you know what? You better leave them alone. When the Jews are down, they go all the way down to the ground. They get as low as they possibly can. But when the Jews go up, they go all the way to the stars. You're going to be in big trouble. Leave them alone. Haman didn't take his wife's advice to heart, and he ends up hanging on the tree together with all of his sons. So what do you see? That is that the Jewish people have HaKadosh Baruch Hu on our side, and this, that Hashem is on our side, means that if anybody stands up against the Jews, it's like you're standing up against Hashem. And therefore, the wisest of the enemies would not get involved. The most foolish of all the enemies, they are the ones that do get involved. There's a story that I'll end with this, that I saw a while ago of, it sounds almost like a legendary tale, but it's brought down in a very reliable place. It was Germany, 29, something like that. And there's some beer pub cellar that a bunch of people are in, and there's this maniac of a young man by the name of Adolf Hitler, who's spewing forth all of his rhetoric about the Jews and how we have to get rid of them and destroy them, the vermin and the scum of the earth. And they've been causing problems since the beginning of time. We have to finally get rid of them and have only the Aryan race. And he was quite an eloquent orator, as anybody had ever seen his things, as they know. But he was fuming like a rabid animal with all this hatred. And after his big drasha was over, everybody piles out. And there's one older fellow sitting in the background, and he's just smiling and laughing. And Hitler walks up and sees it's a Jew. And he says, "Jew, what are you laughing at?" He says, "Nothing, never mind." He says, "What are you laughing at?" He says, "I heard everything you had to say." He said, "I have no doubt that you'll do everything in your power to bring about all of your devious plans." He says, "But my dear friend," he said, "there were other people in history that were similar to you." He said, "There was once a man, his name was Paro. He tried to destroy the Jewish people in Egypt. You know what happened to him? He and all of his nation destroyed with the plagues, drowned in the sea." He said, "There was a man, his name was Haman, biggest Russian, the biggest wicked man in the world. He tried to destroy all the Jews. You know what happened to him? He ended up hanging from the tree together with his sons. Then he quoted that, and there was this one and this enemy now, and they all fell by the wayside, and the Jewish people were still here to stay." So he said, "I have no doubt. You're going to try to do whatever you can." He said, "But at the end of the day, if it happened to Paro and it happened to Haman, it's going to happen to you as well. So we'll just sit back and we'll see what's going to happen." And in fact, that's what happened. He tried his best. He killed 6 million. And at the end of the day, the man in cowardice, took his own life. And he's no longer around. And the Jewish people have rebuilt themselves since the Holocaust to proportions and sizes that we never ever dreamed of before in history. So that's what he's saying. You start off with the Jewish people. It's not just them. They're Yisrael. They have Hashem's name. You're starting up with Hashem, and therefore they shouldn't. Okay.